Hey guys, it's Patrick here, the CEO of Oruka. Oruka is a smart payment ring that allows you tap to pay with your ring. Tap to pay. I want to talk about Africa, yeah, and why there needs to be one currency in Africa. Well, let's start with the west of Africa. One currency in the west of Africa, and let it grow to the entire Africa. Because why not? Let's talk about that. Okay. There are two parts where I think I'm qualified to talk about this. Number one, I'm African, if you can't tell. I grew up I think I'll say I grew up in Nigeria. Well, obviously, you can't tell from the accent, I'm Nigerian. But I was born in Ireland. So, I've got that Western touch, just being born in Ireland and, spent some time in Ireland. And then from there, I came over as well. And then I worked in banking for 20 years as well, still doing banking, in Europe, US, and Switzerland as well. So I've got the experience of banking, okay? More importantly as well, I've got my own startup, which is Oruka. Oruka is a smart payment rings, right? You tap to pay with your ring. So you don't need to have your phone, your wallet, or anything around because you can just walk around with this. You want to go for a swim, tap to pay with no need for your wallet, okay? So we've got the experience on the banking side and also the startup side. And this is very good as well because not just for Europe, this is a pain in Europe, I can tell you. So in Europe, we have this pain point where our batteries die. Okay, it dies every time. No matter where you are, it dies. And worse still, if you're in a metropolitan city, the risk of your phone being snatched is really high. Yeah, I think there's talks as well on South Africa, this happening as well. Almost in UK. So in the UK, I started this last year. In the UK, one of my friends came to visit me, and then what happened? He got out of a station in Canary Wharf while holding his phone, and someone grabbed his phone and stabbed him, which is very traumatic, spending Christmas in the hospital. So we came up with this idea to say, hey, we're going to start something where you don't need your phone to just tap to pay. So if you're on the underground station, just tap to pay. No one's snatching your phone anymore. So I hope more people know about this. Again, we launch this ourselves, in 55 countries, which is very good. But we've grown just by word of mouth, and by these videos. So people watching this, by the way, you can tell straight away, they just go and order it, Even if some people don't order it, funny enough. And I'm not saying this I don't feel good talking about this, but someone specifically was arguing with me about their phone and saying that they don't need, because they can just tap to pay with their phone. They don't need a ring. Then the next week, they came ahead and they ordered it. And they messaged me to say, hey, I ordered a ring because my battery died and I was stranded all night. I had to get a taxi from where I was back home and I had to pay double the price. Came out and I'm ordering this right now. So even if people argue with me and go, hey, there's no need for it, trust me, it's at the back of their mind. And when the need comes up, they know. We don't sell. We've never had to sell. We've never had to run ads. We tried to run ads, actually. It didn't work. It was very expensive as well. We tried to go on podcasts as well, very expensive. So we just don't do any of that. We do pure word of mouth, or you find out here. And then when you need it, you come and order it. So Ruka.com. Yeah. And the other payment rings as well that you can use. But I think, we're one of the most global, I think. And we also do more than just rings, right? So we do health rings, payment rings, business rings. So you're a business owner, you can tap to receive with this. I think we also have business card rings, so virtual cards. So if you're in a conference and you want to share your phone number, you don't have your phone, you can tap this and you get your business contacts over. So it's crazy in terms of what we do with the rings, and then obviously I'm a fan of rings. Okay, I spent too much time talking about myself. I'm sorry, guys. So I want to talk about podcasts. So on this, just cash, right? And why I think Africa should have one currency. Okay, and I say that from someone who's someone's lived in Africa, someone who's been to Africa as part of this startup. So a lot of Africans actually, I think this is very good for Africa because number one, it has no batteries. So it's very good for Africa. If you're in Africa, you want to work with us, let me know. We'll work with you on this one. So this, again, you could just tap to receive money as well across Africa, right? So there's no need already. Africa is a country where they've got, at least in terms of phone penetration rate, we're looking at about 80% there, which is very, very high for a continent where they claim there's no money, right? So this is very good because now you can just tap to pay. Your customers just pay you wherever you are. You don't need generators and things like that. And I say that because I went there and I can tell you right now, you can tell how segregated the market is across Africa. So you want to fly from Nigeria to Ghana, it takes forever. If you want to send money from Nigeria to Ghana, beside you there, you can't convert from Naira to Ghanaian cedis. No, you have to go to the US to convert to the dollar, then convert from the dollar back here. So why people talk about the dollar being dominant, that's dominant because every country is relying on the dollar. Okay. And then why is that? Because the growth is there. Yeah. Let's think about this for a minute, right? So how many millions of people, right, across the US? And people don't realize this, right? But again, I work in banking, so I'm quick to pick out jargons and just talk common sense, right? So common sense, why is the US so strong? The US is so strong because they've got the backing of each other. If there are different currencies within all the states, there are different currencies in the LA and different currencies from US or from LA to New York to Los Angeles to Philly, all these countries, all the states. If they had different currencies, it would be so tough to work. So what have they done? They've got one currency across the entire US. And that helps because you can get up and you can just move. In fact, I can tell you, I was in the US last time. You'd be surprised how much little they know about outside the US. People know, people make jokes about this, right? About the World Cup, or the All World Cup in the US or football that's called football. But they because they don't have to even look outside the US. Why? Because it's just a self-containing, almost continent at this stage. It's self-sustaining because they can do business with each other easily. Yeah. So Trump, no matter what Trump does, no matter what anyone does, you can get up from Alaska and do business with someone in LA. From LA, you can do someone in California, California all the way to New York, right? There are different time zones across the country, but it doesn't matter because they're using the same currency. They're speaking the same language. Yeah. There's nothing about import, export. You can go into that next. It adds a layer of complexity, but simplicity is the currency. Guess another country that's done that very well, another region that's done that very well? Europe. In Europe, you can get up from Germany and do something good. Forget about the UK. Retards. I don't want to call them retards. I'm sorry. Not everyone in the country agreed. But the most stupid thing they did was to leave the EU. That was silly because the currency was already a lot of pressure. So sterling was a lot. I don't go too technical in this, but there's a lot of pressure on sterling. Now they leaving the EU just made it bad for import and export and tariffs and everything. They're still suffering to it now. No matter how strong the pro-Brexiters are trying to be, they're suffering now. But we'll forget that for a minute. Across the actual continent, Ireland, Germany, Italy, all these guys, they've got the same currency. Bulgaria joined them, I think, in January this year. They've got the same currency. That means they can get up from one part and do business with the other. Yeah? But we're not doing that in Africa. So in my opinion, Africa needs to also be in that level playing field because now you can do a lot more business with each other rather than going to the US, converting and exposing yourself to risk. Yeah, exposing yourself on the fluctuation FX rates because FX is a problem. If FX goes down or up, it impacts your import price. And those price sensitivities, right? And those expense, like the price is so important for import and export guys that before they even agree when to ship, they look at the FX rate. And in fact, they buy cash up front, right? Which you call forwards. They buy cash up front just to reduce that exposure. Yeah, and then working in banking all my life, I can tell you that's a huge part of banking, right? Just all those hedges are important, So I'm going to give just 4 reasons why I think Africa needs to have this. And hopefully someone listening to this is strong enough to look into Africa and find out how to promote maybe let's call it an ECOWAS currency. Yeah, and I know there's possibly someone working towards that. We can help there with our rings. Yeah, we can tap to pay with that currency, single currency, but there needs to be a single currency in Africa. But one I've talked about already, which is the trade across borders. A single currency just means you just take away those FX barriers around. Business in Ghana can do business in Senegal, can do business in Nigeria. Just know exactly how much it's going to cost you, right? Which is huge that you can't have in anyone else, right? You can just go do business. Your margins are 20% and the currency has dropped by 20% easily. You could lose that, right? So we've talked about the border, which is important. Secondly, there's the price currency, which I've already hit on. So price is important because if you're doing across currencies, across countries, pricing is so important, especially when the lower prices for customers. Because businesses are not going to take the hit. If a business takes a hit on pricing and currencies, they'll be out of business. And not just because they're being greedy, right? Because some people are greedy. I can tell you, yes, some businesses are greedy, but typically 90% of businesses are not greedy. They just want to make margins. They want to make profits. Go and ask people that are not greedy. Go and ask people like, I'm trying to find all the startups that try and give free products. A startup that gives free product, they're either doomed or they've been funded by some VC. And they're funded by a VC. The VC is going to make their money back or want to get their money back in 2 or 3 years. And before you know it, that's why you see your startup closing because it can't meet up with that demand. So pricing is important, and having one single currency across Africa would help there. Then let's talk about regional identity, which is important, right? Everybody knows this, and subconsciously, whether you agree or not, if you think of the US dollar, guess what comes to your mind? The USA. There's a strong identity there that people don't realize. So if you go into the US, like as soon as you hold the dollar, you're seeing the dollar. Like even if you're FXing, they've got crypto these days. So crypto, is USDT on the crypto side. USDT, same thing, comes up, boom. What do you see there? USD. That comes to your mind. The euro, that's strong enough. Guess what comes to your mind? Euro. You think of the currency. Think of the country. Think of, you can go to our G8, right? The G8 are the top 8 currencies across the world, right? China. If you see the Chinese one, the first thing that comes to your mind is China. So subconsciously, it brings a stronger identity to the country or the region. EU, you're thinking of the EU. No matter how much, if you're converting against the EU, you're thinking about that. UK, I'm not sure why the UK is still there, by the way. But as pound sterling, it's big. And for that reason as well, because again, you think about Great Britain, right? Again, mentally, you're like Great Britain, oh my God, that's why people go there. I mean, no matter how things are bad, the Brexit, that's why you still see people running there because London is up there. No matter how trashy it is, people complain about it not being safe, not being clean, nothing works, the underground's a mess, half the tubes are closed. Can't even talk about, I mean, listen, I live there, I can tell you how crazy it is. But here's the point. The fact that the currency is still within the G8 is very important. That's all they have. If that drops, they're in trouble. Everyone knows about the dollars. Well, I mean, Donald Trump was going to cry and would do anything to make sure the dollar doesn't. Yeah, he talked about that as well. And in fact, he'll do it. I mean, he's fighting wars now. Just wait till they take his currencies out. Right? Is BRIC still going to work? You understand? So let's talk about BRIC for a minute. So BRIC is basically Brazil. I think it was Brazil, Iran, and Russia and China in there, right? And they had a few other countries that joined. But with Iran out now, I think that BRIC union is in shambles, right? We have to look into it as well. But here's the point: this is serving him well. I don't think anyone has talked about this, right? But in truth, what's happened? BRIC were doing so well, they're moving so quick, right? That they were almost going to sidestep the dollar. In fact, they had come up with their own card. They should have come to us on the ring as well, by the way. But they had their own cards. They had everything there. So they were moving. They would have made a move. So this war in Iran, right now, if you're watching this in March 2020, 2026, there's a war going on in Iran. Yeah, so that war has stalled everything against the dollar because the dollar is going to go down. Yeah, so maybe that was his plan. I don't know. It doesn't look like he knows what he's doing there in terms of the war and what's going on there. But this has helped the dollar, strengthen the dollar because it's still pivotal. All the exports, everything's priced against the dollar. Everyone's facing the dollar, if that makes sense. So you're facing the dollar. If you're facing the dollar, that makes it stronger, right? So that's the other point. Then the last point, which I've talked about already, I mean, I hope they don't come for me with this one. And that's the fact that we don't rely on the dollar anymore. Yeah. By we, I mean Africa. I'm being African here when I talk about that. So right now we're all relying on the dollar. Again, if you have an exposure against the dollar volatility, against how much up and down the dollar goes, right? Dollar's going up a lot and down a lot. It affects how you do business with each other. Not even against the dollar. I mean, there's war going on now. People are looking at the dollar, looking at the FX rate. Yeah. Which is huge that people don't realize. Even the black market looks at the dollar. They look at the war going on. So you're exposing yourself there. You want to reduce your exposure with the dollar as much as possible. Yeah, and that's what's important there. So if ECOWAS, let's call it ECOWAS or Western Africa, but ECOWAS, if any of those can come up with a multi-currency, one country or two countries need to start it, right? And you can look at case studies across Europe as well, EU, right? The EU are very good at coming up with this. And if two or three countries come together, I'll tell you more countries will come up together. So reach out to me, guys. If anyone's working in the government here and comes across this video, let me know. Reach out to me. We would work. Again, we're working with a few governments, I can tell you. Working with a few exchanges. We're working with, we're open. Okay. We focus on customers. So if a customer is wearing our ring, that's all we need. And if a customer comes to us and go, hey, I want to pay this way, we'll make it happen for you. Yeah. So we focus on our customers. Okay. So I hope that helps. And guys, so have a good one. And I still love this, my hat behind here. So have a good one, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Take care. See you in the next one. Bye.